Aloha everyone, it's Ajanette and I am here to try to finish your sexual behaviors lecture. I moved to a different computer. I am struggling to get it all into one recording or to get it recorded at all. So this is like my fifth time. So I'm sorry it cut us off. Let's fingers crossed this one works. Otherwise I might have to piece it up. That being said, I think it cut us off when we were talking about fantasies and some of the most common or popular fantasies that have been reported. And some of those include having sex with multiple partners, so threesomes or foursomes or even more. Maybe even orgies, maybe even swinging fantasies. BDSM, which might involve, fantasizing about you being tied up or tying up a partner, other power and domination structures. Novelty or just trying something new and different that you've never tried before or never tried with your partner. Taboo fantasies, like, where society might look down on a particular sexual behavior or activity. And so it might be something that you fantasize on doing. Maybe having open sexual relationships, so having sex with people that aren't your committed partner. Romantic fantasies where, Hollywood can feed these, right? We think about having sex in some romanticized place or in a romantic context. I'm a huge Grey's Anatomy fan, and April Kepner is a virgin. And when they discover that, she talks about, oh, yeah, I had sex on the beach and it was romantic and wonderful. Yeah, for people that have had sex, the beach, I can say, ouch. Sand inside your body can be not an inspiring, arousing concept. Um, and then also, like homoeroticism, where you might engage in having or you might fantasize about engaging in same-sex contact or just viewing same-sex interactions, and that can be stimulating or arousing to you. So I want you to understand that sexual fantasies, sexual desires, and sexual behavior definitely interrelated, right? But separate and distinct. So we might have a particular fantasy, but that may not be something we actually want to live out in our sexual lives. And so we may not ever actually have those sexual desires for ourselves, or we may not want to engage in those sexual behaviors. So just because we have a fantasy doesn't mean we actually want to live out that fantasy. And we may not want to share that fantasy with our partner. So it might be something that we want to keep for ourselves and our own, our own internal cognitive arousal and enjoyment. Or it might be something that actually inspires sexual desires in us that we do want to actually live out that fantasy with a partner. And so certainly sexual fantasies can evolve over time. The content, the nature of the fantasies can evolve as my own sexual identity evolves and my own sense of sexual empowerment evolves. It can evolve based on the nature of a relationship and where you might feel more comfortable exploring certain fantasies with a partner than others, or sharing those. Might evolve just with age. The types of fantasies that I have now may be different than what I had when I was younger, or as I get older, those may change. Or maybe different life experiences may inspire different fantasies as well. So I've provided two resources. One, if you choose to share your fantasies with your partner, and maybe those can evolve into an aspect of your sexual relationship, there's a wonderful guide on how to talk about those fantasies with your partner. Additionally, here's another resource. This visual aid over here to the right actually lists out research from an alternative study that wasn't highlighted in your book that looks at female and male differences in different types of fantasies as well. So having sex with a stranger is something that didn't come up in the video included in your textbook, but that is something that is incorporated into other surveys and studies. And so I want you to explore, kind of be comfortable exploring your own sexual fantasies, and you decide whether it's something you want to talk about and share with a partner or not. That's up to you. And try to liberate yourself from shame and stigma surrounding those fantasies. Other solitary behaviors are masturbation, where we're talking about physically touching and stimulating yourself in a way that promotes arousal and or climax. And masturbation has a lot of taboo and stigma around it as well. There's a whole host of wives' tales around the detrimental and adverse effects of masturbation. They are wholly false. You are not going to go blind. You are not going to grow hair on your palms. You are not going to die. In fact, scientific research shows that masturbation has many wonderful benefits and can be very healthy for yourself as an individual as well as your relationship. Historically, it was very taboo. It was very shamed and discouraged, so much so that you can see this image here to the right pulled from your textbook, which is a anti-masturbation / chastity belt that prevented people from engaging in touching themselves, arousing themselves, and or engaging in sex with others. And in reality, that masturbation shaming is not healthy. I remember a student came to me one time actually experiencing suicidal ideations, tremendous self loathing and shame because he was masturbating. 20-year-old boy, very common, very normal to masturbate, to touch oneself, to climax through masturbation. And this young man thought that he was just a horrid, wretched, evil person and that he was better off dead. Taking the Bible very literally, where it talks about if your right hand causes you to sin, then chop it off. And I had to help normalize that experience. And I want you to know that masturbation can be a very healthy tool to explore your body, to know what you like, to be able to communicate that with a partner. Masturbation is not something you do just to substitute for a partner. It's something that people in partnered, committed relationships engage in masturbation. Some people masturbate in front of one another, and that can be a wonderful part of an actual sexual act. It can be arousing to have that kind of comfort with one another. And also, masturbation in general can be a wonderful stress reliever. It can help to provide that sexual gratification so you're not out having unprotected sex or other risky sexual behavior. It can help give you great self awareness of what is appealing to you, what's arousing to you, to know your body so you can communicate that with your partner, and that can improve the relationship and gratification and intimacy and connection you have in your relationship. There's also research to show that it can reduce your risk of prostate cancer, orgasming in particular. There's studies that have shown that if you have 2 or more orgasms per week, it can increase your life expectancy, whether that's through masturbation or whether that's through partnered sex. So that can be a wonderful homework assignment for yourself. I really just want you to be in a place where you are empowered to know your body, and where I can invite you into a space where you liberate yourself of that shame and stigma surrounding your sexuality and body. Other solitary behaviors might include touching yourself in other erogenous zones outside your genitals and what's typically thought of as your sexual areas, like your breasts, right? Your whole body can enjoy sexual stimulation, sensuality, right? Sometimes just touching the arms in a sensual way or the abdomen in a sexual way can be very arousing. In fact, when you're talking about foreplay and you're talking about becoming aroused and stimulated, touching the body in a sensual way in areas outside of the actual sex organs can be very pleasurable and desirable. And it can generate additional desire, additional sexual tension, that can lead to a very enjoyable and wonderful sexual experience. Some of the most common erogenous zones are your neck, your inner thighs, your lower back, lips, ears. I don't know if you all watch Friends at all, but there's an episode where Monica kind of draws out the different erogenous zones throughout the body and numbers them, and is educating Joey and Chandler, or maybe it's just Chandler, about the combinations of touching those different erogenous zones and not going straight for the boobs and straight for the vagina, and talking about a 1 2, a 1 2 3, a 2 3 4, a 4 5, a 6, a 7, a 3 7, a 6 7, 7 a 7 7. And she kind of lives out having this orgasm based on stimulating those different erogenous zones. So knowing your body, knowing what you like to how you like to be touched, where you like to be touched is important. I think even sketching out something like this with a partner and talking to them in a very open, authentic way could be very arousing and enjoyable as well. But we all have our own individual places that we like to be touched, how we like to be touched, a soft, gentle touch, a tickling touch, a more soft pressure, a more hard pressure. Some people actually like to be scratched and they like that aggression. And so having those conversations and that self-awareness is really important. Another area of sexual behavior can be introduction of toys into your own solitary sexual stimulation and or partnered interactions as well. And so bringing toys or material objects that can help to stimulate you genitally and sexually are good resources. And so they're objects that can stimulate sexual pleasure. They can be either used by yourself or with partners. Sometimes it can be a really healthy tool that you integrate into a sexual relationship. Um, it doesn't have to be in place of your partner. It can be in addition to your partner. Your partner using a toy on you can be very arousing and alluring. Some partners can feel threatened by toys, but I think the healthiest relationships are those that recognize the value of toys, either for individual stimulation or partnered stimulation. Be careful if you're overusing a toy where you can only be stimulated by the toy and where it can kind of diminish and take away from the gratification you have with your partner. Again, those are things that a sex therapist might say refrain from while you're learning to enjoy that pleasure with one another again. Sex toys have been around kind of, gosh, since ancient times, right? 30,000 years of archaeological and anthropological studies have actually revealed prehistoric dildos, phallic objects that are presumably used to enhance or replace or substitute for the sexual pleasure, whether it's bones or stones, but they are in museums all over the world. Current sexual toys are usually made from some sort of plastic or rubber, and they can be strap-ons, vibrators, dildos. Dildos are objects that take the shape of a penis. Vibrators also can take the shape of a penis, but not always, but they actually have some sort of mechanical movement, and strap-ons can take the shape of a penis or not, and you can put them on. You can literally strap them on and engage in sexual relations with a partner. Strap-ons can have components where they're pleasuring a partner and pleasuring you at the same time. So it really depends on the strap-ons. There's huge varieties. There's huge varieties of different anal toys and anal beads and anal vibrators. Really important that you're practicing appropriate hygiene with your toys, you're washing them. I think it's important to have, like, if you're using toys for anal sex, that those are designated separate than toys that you use for vaginal stimulation. And that's important because the germs, you never want to go, whether it's a human appendage or a toy, you never want to go from the anal cavities to the vagina because that can put you at risk of infection that can be very severe. There's penis extenders, penis sleeves, cock rings that can actually help to maintain an erection. Um, and penis sleeves that can be used to kind of simulate uh, engaging in vaginal sex or other bodily cavities. And then there are sex dolls that are fairly common now, and we expect sex robots to be more common in the future. Wouldn't it be great to be able to program a robot to suit your own desires and needs? And wouldn't it be great to have a relationship where you can actually just have a wonderful open conversation and communicate your needs, and where you're both equally committed to each other's pleasure and desires? And so you don't need a robot, so all important to know yourself and have a comfortable relationship with your partner. Other partnered behaviors are coitus. So coitus is actual vaginal penetration by a penis, and so it's typically thought to be heterosexual. You can engage in penetrating sex, anal sex as well. But vaginal sex is often what we think of as sex. And some people think, well, if I haven't had vaginal sex, then I'm still a virgin. And it's interesting to have those conversations with my students where I'm like, okay, so gay men who've never had vaginal sex are virgins? Or lesbians who've only used toys or oral sex are virgins. And and so those are, we all think of sex differently, as we talked about at the beginning of this lecture. But we have to also be mindful that people engage in different behaviors. And is it all sex? Does that all support or contribute to virginity or not? So in general, a coitus encounter can actually last about 3 to 13 minutes. Some people have greater endurance than others, right? It can be very strenuous exercise. It's heart health and respiratory functioning, and you're engaging different muscles throughout your body, right? So it very much can feel like you're running a marathon at times. Be mindful of each other's different physical endurance and capacity and adjust accordingly. Certainly, as we get older, we have less endurance, and so the duration and frequency of coitus may change over time and decreasing with age. And how often you have sex can vary depending upon your culture. We see sex being where it's more of a sex positive culture, and where sex is relied on as more of a relationship enhancing aspect and tool. Then you might see sex happening more often in partnered relationships versus cultures that might look at it more as just for reproductive purposes. You might see it happen less often in relationships. So not only can the frequency vary across cultures, but also your own individual sexual urges, desires, needs. Those might also, we all have different sexual appetites. And so there's a degree of compatibility. Your partner may need more sex than you do. And so that's where toys or masturbation may actually help to supplement that. Oral sex, where we talk about cunnilingus for oral stimulation of a female's external sex organs, including the clitoris, and fellatio for oral sex. So we talk about those as blowjobs, or eating out sometimes is a term, but effectively it's oral stimulation of the genitals for men and women. 69ing is when you're pleasuring each other. And so I actually have some images here of different sexual positions. These are different coital positions. These are different oral positions. And so people engage in different sexual positions. This might be one of the novelty fantasies where you don't want to just have missionary sex and you want to engage in different positions that you've never tried before with your partner. Or maybe you want to engage in anal sex with your partner. It's not just something between same-sex couples. It might be a heterosexual activity as well. And so, thinking about different positions for both oral, coital, and anal sex can be stimulating in relationships. Rates of oral sex and whether or not, some people look at it as disgusting or gross or taboo because, it's a waste of the seed. And other people look at it as a wonderful way to engage in foreplay or enjoyment during times like when a woman might be on her menstrual cycle. It might be a great substitute, right? And so I want you to be mindful that, again, liberate yourself of shame and stigma that's been imposed upon you through outside sources. Think about how you've been socialized to view these different sexual behaviors and invite yourself to step outside of those judgments and try something new that might be valuable and pleasurable for yourself and others. And again, your own sense of sexual empowerment and identity might influence how comfortable you are either receiving or giving oral sex. It shouldn't be something that's forced upon you. It shouldn't be something that's coerced, right? It should be something I personally think it can be a wonderful sense of power. So I love oral sex, and that's something that you can work through with your therapist if you have barriers or again trauma surrounding either type of sex, and working through what can help promote a healthy sexual identity for you and healthy sexual relationships moving forward. Other partnered behaviors I've alluded to are anal sex. Again, whether that's using a toy or whether that is, through a penis being inserted into the anus or a finger being inserted into the anus. Anal sex may include just oral stimulation of the anal area as well. It's not exclusive to same-sex partners. It's very normal to have heterosexual couples including or engaging in anal stimulation. The anus is very, very sensitive. You can actually access the prostate, and it can be very sexually gratifying. So it can be a place where it is stimulated. It can actually promote orgasm for both women and men. So it is an erogenous zone, and you have a fair amount of the population reporting engaging in anal sex at some point in their lives. There is a resource. If you click on this, it actually takes you to a book about anal sex basics, some hygiene and just some anatomical education in the book. And it's a wonderful resource to consider for you and for your partner. And then kink, which can be a whole culture in and of itself. I have to tell you, I've learned so much about the kink community from my students. And one of the wonderful things that I love about the kink community is they typically are very comfortable talking about their sexual desires and needs and talking about sexual boundaries. They tend to be very explicit about that. They're very respectful about individual desires. They tend to be very liberated from the stigmas and the shame that we often find in, everyday culture. And so I really appreciate the sense of empowerment and communication in kink communities. But kink can be, it's all consensual. Consent is a primary value. They have sometimes code words and, they have very extensive conversations about each other's boundaries. And so I really appreciate that. Sometimes it can involve bondage. Sometimes it can involve some sadism and masochism where you find it to be sexually stimulating when someone is inflicting pain on you. And some people find it arousing to be inflicting pain on each other, whether that's whipping, biting, clawing, whatever it might be, right? I know that there's also one aspect of the kink community where they like to draw blood. Again, this is something that has to be consensual. You should never try to engage in this type of behavior with a partner with whom you have not had the conversation. Because a partner may not enjoy being, smacked or hit or whipped. And it's so definitely something where if you're not having a consensual conversation, it can be abuse. And you don't know what someone's trauma background might be. So definitely make sure you have explicit conversations. Another resource, this actually goes through some fictional narratives. There's other resources out there that can be more instructive and educational, factual about the kink community, guides and tools for how to have conversations about kink and set boundaries around kink. Again, something that will be part of our sex contract as well. In all relationships, consent should be at the top of your list. That is where we have voluntary, explicit, conscious, a commitment where I'm saying, yes, I agree to participate in this act. So it doesn't just mean I'm agreeing to have sex with a person. You have to have consent at every step of the act, right? Like I might be consenting to have sex with you in some ways, but not other ways. I'm willing to engage in oral sex in this way, but not that way. I'm willing to engage in coitus, but not anal sex. These are really important aspects. You cannot just engage in a particular behavior with someone while you're in a sexual act. You cannot just say, okay, well, I'm going to have anal sex with them without their consent. It's really important that you're getting consent in every step, every behavior, and it's continuous consent because you can withdraw consent at any time. So being aware of your partner's cues, their verbal cues, their nonverbal cues, being aware of their pleasure. If sometimes we don't know how to say no or stop, and so silence and lack of engagement and lack of participation can indicate that I am no longer consenting or enjoying this aspect of that sexual engagement and interaction. And so we need to come back then and have those conversations, check in with our partner throughout that sexual encounter, and make sure that we are, in fact, both willing participants and both enjoying that encounter and experience. Non-consensual sex is anything that's forced, pressured, coerced. Come on, babe. Come on. Come on. I need it. Come on, babe. Even that can be non-consensual sex. When I'm feeling pressured to do something that I really don't want to do, that can be non-consensual. Consensual has very clear, explicit, yes, we're both into this, we both want this. But at the same time, I'm going to discourage you from using sex as a weapon in your relationship because that can be a key to destroying your relationship. I'm also going to encourage you to consider your partner's sexual needs and having a conversation and boundaries around how you can make sure you're both getting your needs met and being gratified in a way that's healthy for the relationship. Because if you have different sexual desires and appetites and needs, and you're not meeting those needs, it can lend itself to problems in the relationship. So make sure your consent is active, it's voluntary, make sure that you know it's ongoing, it's clear, explicit. Recognize as soon as there's a no, it's a no. It's not a I should pressure, I should encourage, it's a no. It should immediately stop. So having very clear communication around that is important. Other things that you need to consider are safer sex practices. Your book goes through a list of different sexual behaviors and ways that you can engage in safer sex practices. And so it's important. Most people know about male condoms, but they don't know about female condoms. So condoms and dental dams are really important. So dental dams are used for oral sex, particularly with a woman. So you can actually lay a piece of plastic over the female vulva genitalia area. They can still feel, the warmth and the pressure and the sensation, but it's preventing you from being exposed to those bodily fluids that might carry a bacteria or viruses. You can also have a female condom that's actually inserted up into the vaginal canal, and this can actually block the cervix area. And so you don't want to use these two things together. It's one or the other. This actually goes over the penis, and this goes inside the vagina. And you can use these with a lubricant, and those are wonderful tools to practice against STIs. And they can actually be contraceptives as well and prevent pregnancy. Obviously, if you're doing any kind of penetration of the vaginal canal, then you need more than a dental dam, and a condom is recommended at that time. Other safer sex practices that aren't addressed in the book, but I want to highlight them, are vaccinations. HPV vaccination is offered now for individuals under the age of 45. HPV is one of the most common viruses. It's thought that everybody gets HPV at some point throughout their lifetime, but think of it like the flu. Where we might all get a virus that causes the flu at some point throughout our lifetime, but our body naturally fights it off. That's how HPV is. For some people, it stays with them forever. Um, and it can actually cause cervical cancer. It's the most common cause of cervical cancer, and HPV vaccinations are available for both males and females, and it has substantially reduced the rates of cervical cancer, particularly in Australia, where they implemented the vaccine prior to the US. So I'm going to encourage you to talk to your physician or go to Planned Parenthood or other health clinics that might offer the HPV vaccine for free. There's also HIV PrEP, particularly if you are a gay male. This is medication that you can take that reduces your risk of getting HIV if you are engaging in partnered sex, knowingly or unknowingly, with someone who has HIV. So it can be a wonderful preventative medication that you can take. Another part of safe sex is just honest and open dialogue, having conversations about likes, dislikes, talking about your sexual history, talking about your history of STIs and STDs, being open and communicative with your partners. It's never fun to find out that someone had unprotected sex with you and did not disclose a history of STDs. Never fun, right? And then, of course, just paying attention to your partner during that sex act, seeing when they might be becoming more withdrawn, more tense, more uncomfortable, when they're no longer actively reciprocating. And that might be an indication that something's not comfortable for them, and maybe y'all need to have some conversations or switch things up to ensure that it's a pleasurable experience for both of you, and that it can be enhancing to the relationship rather than problematic. Other things that you might want to think about to promote a sexually gratifying relationship between you and your partner. Again, talk to them. Know your own body, explore yourself, have that self-awareness, and then have the courage, lean into the discomfort, and have the courage to have that conversation. Be willing to try new things. Remember that what you enjoyed with a previous partner may evolve and change based on your comfort level and your sense of safety with a new partner. Try out new positions, try out new activities. There's wonderful games that you can buy. The sex shop might have some where you can actually be creative, be adventurous in your relationship. Maybe integrate some toys. My ex and I went to happy hours at the sex shop on Fridays as a means of trying to kind of liven up our relationship. There were other toxic issues in the relationship, so it was never going to work. But certainly, if you want a sexually fulfilling and gratifying relationship, then trying new things, switching it up. People can get bored and habituated with the same kind of sex all the time. So some variety, some adventure can be valuable. Make sure, again, you're respecting consent, having explicit conversations. And I'm also going to say, check your ego at the door, check your judgment at the door too. Um, don't be insecure if your partner wants to try something different. Sometimes it's not a reflection of you at all or their gratification or enjoyment with you. It's just part of their sexual desires and fantasies. And it's okay to explore those and to engage in new things. So be willing to have those conversations. Don't take it personal. Give your partner the freedom and space to share those desires and needs with you openly without being reactive and it jeopardizing the relationship. And so that kind of wraps up our sexual behaviors. Um, make sure that as you're wrapping up your work, you're engaging in your reading, taking detailed notes over your reading and your lecture, and then doing your lecture notes assignment and your learning activity. Okay, enjoy, and I will see you in the next chapter.